Well, hello, friends. I'm talking today about the book of Proverbs, and I'm sorry I've not been with you a whole lot these last couple of weeks and through the Bible readings. It's moving along quickly now, kind of. There's a lot of Psalms, and did just a couple videos throughout the book of Psalms. A lot of interesting um, material in there. So hopefully you enjoyed the Psalms and kind of that time spent there. We're going to go quickly now. As a matter of fact, today we're already past Proverbs and on to Ecclesiastes. So I will do a video in the next day or two on Ecclesiastes, and then we'll be moving on quickly from there as well. And I think next week, well, later this week, we'll get to Isaiah, which we'll spend quite a bit of time there. So for Proverbs, I actually want to back way up to the beginning of Proverbs, because I think the way that it's introduced, this book, and the first few chapters really give us a solid sense of it. And we'll see there's a lot of interesting material through the book of Proverbs and some variation, but a lot of the same kind of themes coming up in somewhat different ways as the book of Proverbs goes on. The interesting thing about Proverbs that, again, we'll see here, I think that's interesting in our Bible and Scripture, is that this is not presented as God talking to his people the way that we would have, like, say, in the book of Exodus or Leviticus, things like that, and we'll see in the prophets, like when we turn to Isaiah as well, this book presents itself as wisdom for living from a person or people who have experience with walking with God. So that's kind of how this works. We'll see what it says about itself. You always want to look in Scripture. What do particular books of Scripture say about themselves? Because they're all inspired and useful, right? 2 Timothy 3:16. But they're not all exactly the same. Different genres lend themselves to different interpretive methods at times, and that's interesting for us to think about. So let's jump in, take a little bit of a look. My battery's low here, so if I cut out suddenly, you'll know what happened. My battery on my laptop here died. So Proverbs 1, verse 1, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. So the book of Proverbs are associated with Solomon as a collection. There's other times, I think, where particular names are pointed out. So we could think of Solomon as kind of collecting this wisdom. Not that it necessarily all came from him directly, but that he is what wise people do is they collect wisdom from other wise people, and then they pass it on to the next generation. And we'll see that's how this is being presented here. And in chapter 1, it tells us part of the purpose of this collection of Proverbs. Verse 2, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior. Okay, so Proverbs is not just all about kind of big picture things we tuck into our minds only, but that shape the way that we live. This is wise living. And as it should be clear to us already now, that this whole big picture that we've been looking at is about a way of life following God's will, God's way for us is what's going on here, right? For giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning. Let the discerning get guidance. So these Proverbs are for someone that is not very wise. Here's how you start to get wise in the way you live. For somebody who's already pretty wise, you're going to add to your understanding to kind of go deeper. So that's kind of what we're doing here, really throughout the big picture, right? For some people that don't know what God is like, we're introducing them to the God of Scripture, the God of Israel. For those, many of us who are already following, we're learning more. We're going deeper in the way that we understand and live these things out. Let's look at the second section of Proverbs 1 in verse 8. Again, kind of looking at how this is being presented, this literature. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Okay. So the idea here is, again, being passed down. This wisdom is being passed down from one generation to the next, whether that's in our families with their actual kids. We see back in like Deuteronomy that's even back in Genesis, right? That's the invitation that we're given, but also in the community of faith for us, the church now today, or others in our lives, we want to pass on what we've learned in wisdom and life and following God, and give that to the next generation so that they don't have to learn everything the hard way. Ideally, right? Is kind of part of the goal there. Some interesting literary things that happen in Proverbs as well. This idea of wisdom being personified is really interesting. It comes up a few different times. Again, in another section of Proverbs chapter 1, really is, if you want to just kind of reorient yourself towards the Proverbs, chapter 1 is a great place to do that, right? Out in the open, wisdom calls aloud. She raises her voice in the public square. So this is idea that this proclamation, this invitation for people to follow this way of life. And there's all kinds of warnings throughout the Proverbs. If you don't, here's the kind of the bad things that are going to happen as a result. Let me look at just a few verses in chapter 3, and then I'll make this a short video today. Chapter 3, verse 1. My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. So again, I talked a little bit about this in the book of Job that we looked at, that there's this kind of main theme of follow God, follow his commands, live right, follow the way of wisdom, and things are going to go pretty well for you. That's kind of the dominant theme. But then there's this Job theme, and we'll be challenged with Ecclesiastes here in our reading right now, really, to say, yeah, but not always. Most of the time, maybe, but not always. So this is the contribution of a book of the Bible, and then the larger kind of collection that we have of Scripture, and how the things come together to give us a really nice full picture. And of course, perhaps one of the most well-known verses, or a couple verses in Proverbs, and I want to end with this because as we leave Proverbs, I don't want you to only be just overwhelmed by the immensity, but I want you to have a handle to hold on to kind of understand what the Proverbs are. If somebody would ask you, what are the Proverbs all about, that you would be able to give an answer. So hopefully some of what I've talked about in these few minutes will help you there. But let me end with this. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. There's a lot of things that are popping up throughout the Proverbs later on that are about basically we make plans, and sometimes we don't. We know this. We don't always submit our plans to God. We kind of make our own path, and that's not wise. The path of wisdom is to seek God's will, God's direction for our lives, and walk in that way. Trust in the Lord with all your own heart, and lean not on your own understanding. One of the great challenges and important sort of baseline lessons of faith, right? In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight, right? Learning to seek God's will in the everyday practicalities of our lives is the baseline really of discipleship. And it's something that we need to learn a lot about. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring benefit, health to your body and nourishment to your bones. So this is not only kind of the spiritual heavenly realm, so to speak, but this is practical everyday advice for living from wise people who have followed God. And that's the baseline of this wisdom. It's learn to fear the Lord, learn to acknowledge God in all things, and follow kind of this path of wisdom. What are your thoughts about Proverbs? What are your favorite Proverbs? Do you have a favorite one or two throughout? There's some that I really like, and but I'd love to hear yours there in the comments. Okay, I'll see you for Ecclesiastes in the next day or two. Hope you guys have a great day.